started really understanding why it's important to take notes. So maybe those are my words. Are you now really understanding, or what's the importance of taking notes in your small groups?
So currently I am taking the anecdotal notes for a small group, and I find them important because I have 5 or 6 different small groups, and it's kind of hard to memorize everything. So I take detailed notes in my Google Doc, and before the groups come over, I'm able to review each individual student's notes to remind myself of what they understand, what they don't understand, what I need to reteach, what I need to follow up with. And by reviewing that, I'm able to come with a mindset in my group to start in a particular section on the learning continuum.
Have you noticed any increases in student achievement since you've been looking at your notes?
I have, because, for instance, one student did not know the pronouns that's used for second person second person point of view, and so I left the note, student does not understand point of view, and I reminded that student before leaving my group, this is the expectation for you when you come back to me. And so the 2 days later, when that student came back to see me, she knew second person uses the pronoun you, and that it is rarely used, and I'm able to check off on that particular note under that date. And then when I see her again, either the next day or a couple days later, we don't have to review second person again. We can move into the text or further explain whatever else needs to be learned for that group rotation.
Can you turn around your computer screen? I'd like to see your notes. So your note catcher for small groups is electronic, right?
Yes. So this works best for me. It also helps me hone in on my typing skills. And so currently I teach 6th and 7th grade, so they're separated. This is the 7th grade small group rotation, literature anecdotes. So I have all the kids grouped: red, black, green, yellow, yellow to red, etc. Each of the kids' names are placed in their particular wristband. I even have the date in which we focused on, the text that they're focusing on. I have specific notes. Tina understands FAT, feelings, action, thoughts. 1, 2, 3, first, second, third. Can identify the point of view in the text. She differentiates between third person point of view and third person omniscient because they're completely different. And then in parentheses, they had an assessment from their reading text, so she got a 5 out of 6, which I think is essentially mastery. Rayshawn, same thing with this kid here. Ariana did not complete the reading package. She didn't have it, did not know the prefix in for inside. So even though we're focusing on point of view, students still need to understand certain concepts in order to get to the point of view. So I also make those notes. If a student was absent, I have that on there also. And then if I was to see, like, we're focusing on, let me see. That is the black group. So that was on Tuesday. I didn't see them again until, where are they? I didn't see them again until Thursday. And so it says, see previous notes. Students are ready for the assignment. Their assignment has been graded. They are ready for the exit ticket. So when I saw them again, I didn't have to review anything. It was, let's take our exit ticket. And so I have their exit ticket as their culminating assessment that I will then grade and review.
Thank you, Ms.
So, I mean, it works. It's helpful. Like, I literally, in the beginning, it was kind of slow because it's like I'm asking questions and they're responding to. I have to make sure I capture what it is that they're talking about, and then from there, I'll go from there.
How are you using that data to rotate your groups?
So my students, this is for informational because we're working on informational this week. So they all have this chart of the groups, their wristband that they're working on, and because we're focusing on one thing over here, I have all of their reading resources, and then attached to their reading resource, they have their learning continuum here for informational. So they'll have to read the gray box, the purpose of reading. I'll have their informational, the wristband. We're focusing on we're focusing on an argumentative text, which is the author's claim, the author's argument. And then they'll also be responsible for writing down the objectives they're focusing on. For example, for informational 211 and 220, the objective is students will be able to identify the author's claim and argument and evidence to support the author's claim and evidence. And then we go down the learning continuum together as an introduction to the text, and they have to circle what particular strategies from the learning continuum applies to this particular reading. And the objective aligns with the text, which also aligns with the learning continuum. And then I tell them that You need to be able to do this by the very end, and that's the expectation. I have some examples from last week when we focused on literature. Their assessment was a writing assessment, so they do have multiple choice text dependent questions. But I think it's also important for the students to be able to articulate their ideas. And so here's an example of their assignment. This was my 221 to 230 group. One question, very basic, all the groups had: which point of view is the text written in? How do you know? Another question is, she doesn't have the questions written on here. Another question is, how does the narrator attention to the yellow wallpaper changes throughout the text? The objective was, how does the point of view change and develop over the course of the text?
Do the students have to recognize the alignment between the objective?
They do. So that's something that I hound in the very beginning. They all have to write the objective down. And let me actually show you an example from last week, because we're just starting informational this week. Here we go. I'm in like paper overload at this point. So here's an example. So we go through, we annotate the text together, we take notes. I tell them specifically what to look for. They reiterate it. And then they're also responsible for taking any notes. This is one example. This is my higher level group, so they don't need as much scaffolding as the other groups. So they'll take notes. This is one of my lower groups. They'll take notes. Sometimes, depending on the questions that they have, they'll have to create graphic organizer. Think about what this question is asking you to do and what type of graphic organizer you need to complete. And then each group, they're all reading a different text based upon their grade level or their learning continuum. And so every single one is different. So it's a lot to keep up. So the anecdotal notes help me with that. But it's a lot.
So let me ask you a question. Now, you weren't teaching like this a year or two ago.
No, I used to lecture all day.
So tell me, what was the shift for you this year and now?
From my previous teaching, or from just starting here in Morton in the beginning?
Just starting here in Morton in the beginning, and even just from last semester, from this semester, you changed things, how you were doing.
I did. So I think that through dialogue with colleagues and understanding and asking questions, I was able to shift my teaching, honing in specifically on each of the students' individual rich strands, not just their holistic score. And in doing so, I'm able to zoom in on what the students really need to know. For example, if I have a student with a holistic grit band of a 215, but she's scoring at a 231 plus in literature, I have to make sure, thanks to Dr. Daniels, that I provide her with 231 plus materials in literature and not just focus on the 215, because she won't be able to meet and or surpass her goal.
But let me ask you a question. What do you think will happen if you are differentiating by strand and giving her what she needs at the strand that's the lowest and the highest?
The expectation is, if I'm giving her the materials in which she's ready to learn, the expectations for her to master that learning continuum to then move up to the next rate band. However, if I'm giving her a learning continuum that she's not ready to learn it and it's below her rate band, she's not going to grow.
So do you think that at the lower rate bands, do you think if she becomes more proficient in those areas that the higher rate band her work in literature, which is at a 231, will move as well?
I'm not understanding your question.
So I'm saying that is a huge disparity. You have a 231 in literature, and then in vocabulary and informational text, it must be, it's a 215 in which one? Is that vocabulary or information?
I think like vocabulary is like a 208, literature is a 231 plus, and then
informational is what?
Informational is like a 231 plus, informational is 231 plus, literature is like a 220, vocabulary is low. So by providing her with the 231 plus in informational, the expectation is for her vocabulary to grow, because being introduced to a 231 plus in informational, you're being exposed to higher level vocabulary. But at the same time, I have to ensure that because she's in a 208 in vocabulary, I also provide her the resources in that RIT band, but also continue to push her to let her grow to move up to the next, which will ultimately impact her overall score.
So this is interesting. if you provide her and I want you to think about this is a probing question. So she's at a 231 in literature. Could you merge what she needs to know for vocabulary and have her look at that in literature?
Absolutely. I think that's where she'll get the most of her growth is by using the vocabulary in informational 230 plus to enhance her vocabulary overall.
So have you been doing that already?
And so currently my students are creating their own Quizlet set on Quizlet based upon their vocabulary. And starting next week, because I'm trying to focus on each rich strand week by week while also incorporating vocabulary daily. And so for next week, my students are going to be starting a review of root words. Root words are extremely
so I'm just gonna something that I want you to push you to think about is how can you get her, so after you do that direct instruction, that might be indirect, because are they doing that with you?
They'll be starting with me and then they're working independently.
So how can you use that work that she's going to be doing in vocabulary with her when she comes to you for the literature strand? That's what I want you to think about. How can you get her to do some of that work? Because she's already high in literature. It sounds like she needs to do her work around vocabulary in context. What do you think?
I agree with that, because like I stated earlier, I'm sorry, I have a headache. If I'm giving her 208 or 201 or 210 writ band for vocabulary, she's not going to reach her maximal potential or continually reach her maximal potential in the 231 informational writ band. So, and I'm happy we're having this conversation, because the expectation was to put her in the 201 and 210 in order to master those skills in vocabulary. But ultimately, I'm doing her a disservice, because if you understand informational 231 plus and the expectation, you're understanding those complex terms. You can do it in vocabulary too.
So the issue is that she just may not be having the opportunity to do the work and the practice in vocabulary with the things that she knows. Because if she's reading at a 231 plus, that lets us know that the ability is there, but maybe she just never had the practice.
Right. So more strategies.
Yep.
Just honing in on practice. And so what I can do, in addition to this being a rotation they do on the outside from here, with our leveled text and we're now going to be focusing on specifically vocabulary. I don't have to pull just words. I can use the
what do you call
here.
Well, the question is
and they actually have it in here. So
you're going to be doing both. What is that instruction called?
At any one time, I'm not going to just be focusing on literature. It's literature and vocabulary, because the students need to be able to understand any comprehension and read the text.
But I'm thinking more about what we talked about in the PD. So what I hear you saying is that you need to do both, the direct and the indirect. Because what would the instruction where they're doing that independently outside of you be?
It's indirect.
Right. And so when you come back in the group and you have her bring that individualized packet for literature,
then we make it direct.
Then you make it direct if you focus in on those strategies within that packet. Yeah. Right. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rowe.